So Ben Askren has responded to Jake Paul's call out for a boxing match, and I guess you could say at this point that the pair of them have unofficially, verbally agreed to a boxing match, which I think should take place in March. That's when Ben Askren says it should take place as well. I understand that he wants a little bit of a training camp to make sure that he really can put away Jake Paul and embarrass him, and I'll read you what Ben Askren has said in his little statement that he came out with. He said, "I'm a world-class athlete. I've won NCAA titles. I've been to the Olympics. I've won belts in multiple mixed martial arts organizations. And also, yes, Mr. Jake Paul, I do accept. I know you called me out after your last fight against that bum Nate Robinson, which I know Nate Robinson seems like a nice guy, and he seems to have taken the loss quite well, but he is quite officially a bum the way he fought Jake Paul, let's be real, in terms of boxing skill or fighting skill whatsoever. And listen, it's a pretty simple choice," says Ben Askren. "I'm going to make a whole bunch of money to beat up a guy who's pretending to be an athlete, because at the end of the day, that's what you're doing. And I know you may think I don't have too many stand-up skills, but at the end of the day, I don't really need to." And I think I 100% agree with Ben Askren here. And I also believe that Ben Askren would completely dismantle Jake Paul in a boxing match. And I don't understand that people that come out and say that even guys like Dillon Danis would lose to Jake Paul in a boxing match because he beats Nate Robinson. Okay, I don't even really consider Jake Paul an amateur with 3 wins in boxing. And we're going to get into all of this as we go on, but I mainly want to talk about Ben Askren versus Jake Paul because it seems like this is the most reasonable one that seems to be taking place. I mean, Dillon Danis and Jake Paul, that was being discussed and that doesn't seem to be going anywhere. And Michael Bisping versus Jake Paul, I don't see Jake Paul taking on Michael Bisping whatsoever, ever in life. Bisping would completely toy with him and destroy him, and it would be incredibly embarrassing. But still, I do want to mention as well, Ben Askren seems to be the most recent one, so I feel like this is the one that has a bit of chance of happening. And I also believe that out of the 2 people, not including Dillon Danis maybe, but out of Michael Bisping and Ben Askren, why would you take on Michael Bisping instead of Ben Askren? I feel like Jake Paul's going to have eyes on Ben Askren. I think people have this delusion that Ben Askren is not good at striking, and I'm going to explain that as well, because I don't think Ben Askren is good at striking. I think he's terrible at striking. Compared to Conor McGregor and Jorge Masvidal, you know, and maybe a bit of Robbie Lawler, you know, like this is a different kind of perspective. I feel like in terms of 100 or 99.99999% of the population, Ben Askren is a really good striker. But when you're looking at him in his combat setting of the UFC, you're going to say that he's very bad at striking. But this guy has been doing it for over a decade now in the mixed martial arts game. And if you think he hasn't been hitting pads and training his boxing and stand-up skills in between that for in case a time comes where he can't take an opponent down, you're straight delusional if you think Jake Paul's going to beat Ben Askren. And I don't even think Jake Paul would beat Dillon Danis. Listen, I know I said in Jake Paul's, I made a reaction to the situation. I know I said that Jake Paul could end up beating Ben Askren down the line. I think a perfect thing for him to do would be to take on these YouTube stars now, because I feel like the ESPN app and people on the ESPN organization, all of the people on the panel, Ariel Helwani and DC, seem to be saying it's time for Jake Paul to step on from celebrities. But why would Jake Paul step away from celebrities? He's got KSI, he's got his brother. Both of them are really easy people that can't really box too well. I know Logan Paul can throw a nice looking jab, I understand, but let's be real. In terms of the grand scheme of combat sports athletes, Logan Paul and KSI are not really in the mix of things. I think we can all agree. I think Jake Paul should take on those names first. Maybe take on another YouTuber. Like, I know he was calling out a guy from the Ace family. I can't remember his name. McBroom. I don't remember his first name. Kevin McBroom from the Ace family. Jake Paul was calling him out. Make those easy fights and get those wins, Jake Paul. And then only then, once you get past those guys and you've been boxing for another 2 years, and Ben Askren is another 2 years older, and Michael Bisping is another 2 years older, I would never even... If I'm Jake Paul's management, I'm saying, listen, shut the fuck up about the Michael Bisping one. Okay, I understand everything else, but let's just end this Michael Bisping train of thought, because that's never going to happen in my opinion. Then look at the Dillon Danises of the world. Once you've been through the YouTube scene and you've built yourself, maybe Jake Paul's 7-0 by the end of 2021, or maybe he's 7-0 by the end of 2022 is a bit more of a realistic expectation, but still, maybe he stays active, gets a couple of wins, trains for 2 more years, Askren gets a bit older, then you can start looking for these fights. Or Dannis doesn't really develop in the boxing skill too much and Jake Paul makes up a bit more of a difference and he has a bit of a better chance against a guy like Dillon Danis. That's when you call out these people. But to act like these guys don't train boxing on a daily basis for when they had a career in pursuing themselves to be the greatest mixed martial artist on the planet is just delusional. I think Ben Askren would toy with Jake Paul, start to finish, do whatever he wanted with him in the boxing ring, because I'll tell you this, not looking that good against Damian Maia, but staying competitive on the feet, I'll take that any day over looking good against Nate fucking Robinson. Okay, did you at any point see Damian Maia sprint towards Ben Askren and wing punches like a retard? No, you didn't. You saw him stay in a stance. You saw him throw jabs quite well. And although he didn't have the speed that a McGregor jab does, or like a winging shot of Davison Figueiredo in the flyweight division, like it's still technical stand-up skill. And we can say that they look terrible compared to the other guys around them at the top of the division of the UFC welterweight division. I can say Ben Askren looks bad compared to guys in the top 15 of the UFC welterweight division. That doesn't mean that I think he's bad in the... Like, listen, Jake Paul would get schooled by Damian Maia like a bitch, man. Why is this even a conversation about who would win? Ben Askren would get in there and make him look like a fool in the boxing exchanges, and it would be embarrassing for Jake Paul because people have this perception that because Ben Askren dived into a flying knee from Jorge Masvidal within the first 4 seconds of a fight, he can't do anything on the feet to people. It's very interesting to me seeing this. And I see that DC even said that Dannis would lose to Jake Paul. Like, you look at Ben Askren's record and Dillon Danis' record. Dannis has been competing since April 2018. That was his MMA debut. Took on a guy 2-4, which, by the way, is the better record, in my opinion, than anyone Jake Paul has taken on boxing-wise and record-wise in boxing. Then he took on a guy who was 3-2. When Dillon Danis started his mixed martial arts pro career, not Jake Paul taking on YouTubers, pro career in mixed martial arts in Bellator, do you think he just signed a fight and then said, oh, I might learn some boxing? Because even then, he would have more experience training boxing than Jake Paul, who started his career in November of 2019. I believe, boxing. So what if he had 6 months before that? Maybe he'd be still under the amount of experience than Dillon Danis by like a year and a half, year and a quarter. Do you think that Dillon Danis actually started his career in mixed martial arts, signed a fight, and then picked up, oh, I might as well learn some boxing then, seeing as I'm fighting in fucking Bellator? No, he was at SBG for years, helping with Conor McGregor's camps, training stand-up, readying himself for his own mixed martial arts career. What is going on? DC says, oh no, Dannis would lose. I don't understand. Dannis would win. If Jake Paul gets more wins under his belt, then comes back around to the Dannis fight, then let's talk. If Dannis still hasn't done anything in his MMA career and is still injured, then let's talk. But it's never going to happen, in my opinion. These fights won't happen. This is just Jake Paul tying himself in with the fight world and gaining the fight fans. That's why he's not calling out some random musician, because that doesn't get the fight world interested. He's stealing all of the fight world media's headlines because he's giving all of the attention to fighters. Jake Paul's going to turn around after all of these call-outs, in my opinion, and go, hey, KSI, May or June, like, all of this talk towards real fighters will end. He's just increasing his value and his simple promotional skills to earn himself a bigger check when he does eventually go towards KSI. If Jake Paul takes on KSI and calls out KSI after the, who did he say, Nate Robinson fight? If he calls out Jake Paul after that, I mean, if he calls out KSI after his Nate Robinson fight, fucking hell, all these dumb names I have to fucking remember. Shit. Jake Paul, if he calls out KSI after his Nate Robinson fight and only KSI and says, that's the one I want, the promotion that pays them their money is going to say, right, Jake Paul, what other options do you have? Jake Paul has given himself thousands of other options around every genre of entertainment and fame in the world. Every single avenue you can go down, Jake Paul has made a call out in that area, and he's set himself up with other options that people are now interested with. So when he eventually goes back towards the KSI fight, which is a YouTuber that he would most definitely beat, in my opinion, he can say, listen, you're going to have to pay me because I can make 500 grand against Ben Askren. So it's going to be millions, or we ain't going to do this. Like, this isn't some normal paycheck. He's given himself other options, so he has more power in negotiation. He's built these other fights, and all of these pro fighters have bit on the opportunity because they know they would destroy him. Ben Askren, I want everyone who's a Jake Paul viewer on this video to just enlighten yourself a tiny bit here. Go to Google right now and type in 3 words, Ben Askren Tapology, and you click on the first result, and you go back and look that Ben Askren started his MMA career in 2009 and has been facing decent competition and better competition MMA-wise and stand-up-wise than Jake Paul. These aren't YouTubers that decided to pick up boxing within 6 months of training. These are MMA fighters with amateur careers who spent years in a gym before they eventually went pro. 14-6 Matt Dillon when Ben Askren was 2-0. That's already better than every record of every opponent of Jake Paul's career combined. Then you look Ryan Thomas when he was 4-0. He was 10-3. Ryan Thomas beats him, dominates him, and I know he does it in a grappling way, and sometimes in his fights, his stand-up does not look so good. But you have to understand that Ben Askren's stand-up in MMA is designed not to stand with people. He's not throwing 1-2s against Masvidal early and standing in a boxing stance and dancing around on the outside because he knows Masvidal will beat him there. Ben Askren's stand-up game is to lure people into where he wants to go, and the only reason we saw him do otherwise against Damian Maia is because Maia could compete on the ground with him, and we saw that happen multiple times in the fight. Maia had him in nearly every single submission position on the ground whenever they did exchange on the ground, and Ben Askren went for those takedowns at the end of those rounds. That's why he was forced to stand up with Damian Maia. Otherwise, you wouldn't see him do that kind of stuff. And he was landing rear bolo uppercuts on Damian Maia. Jake Paul gets 1-2'd straight down the pipe from Damian Maia. Jab to the body, whatever Maia wants to do. Rear uppercut. Maia could be throwing Aldo body shots towards Jake Paul and he wouldn't be able to do anything about it. I don't understand how this is a conversation. I don't understand how DC, of all people, has come out and said that even Dillon Danis would lose to him. Don't see it happening. You're telling me that Ben Askren, whose stand-up in MMA is designed to get people to the ground. People saw him not throwing shots against Robbie Lawler. He was literally just trying to get a hold of Robbie Lawler in an appropriate way without being smacked on the chin too many times before he did it. If Ben Askren wanted to go out there and stick down a 1-2 right down the pipe on Robbie Lawler's chin, he wouldn't do well doing that. And he knows that. So he limits himself, and if you give him the choice to stand and only stand with Jake Paul, he's going to take that decades worth of on-the-side boxing skill learning into strictly boxing for like 12 weeks until March when he wants the fight to happen, and he's going to destroy Jake Paul's face. Knowing that he's only going to box and knowing that he's forced to stand with someone, he will completely change his style. You'll probably see Ben Askren in like a cool-looking boxing stance, even though you haven't seen him do that in MMA. You'll see Askren with his hands against his chin, throwing jabs to the body, doing what you wouldn't expect him to do because it's a boxing match. You'll become the boxer. People are talking about how Conor McGregor is going to have these weird angles against Mayweather, and you saw him come out a bit more boxing heavy because that's the sport he's in. Rather than all this karate stuff McGregor normally does on the outside and loading stuff up from way out, he stood in a boxing stance, he threw jabs to the body, he threw jabs upstairs to set everything up. It's just what you do. And Jake Paul would lose to Ben Askren, he would lose to Dillon Danis, and he would get absolutely molested by Michael Bisping, even with one eye. So yeah, stupid conversation. I'm glad I've made a video and fucking set that shit to rest. Anyway, goodbye. Thank you for watching. Click that button up there. See you later. Oh, and Ben Askren could train with, like, anyone he fucking wants. So, you know, he's known in the combat sports community. So if Ben Askren really wanted to go, hey, Freddie Roach, give me some fucking tips. Hey, Teddy Atlas, want to work this thing out? I'll humble that YouTube kid. You think Teddy Atlas wouldn't jump on that opportunity? That massive moment between Ben Askren and Jake Paul? Atlas would probably help him out a little bit. Askren has that clout in the fight game that Jake Paul doesn't have. He can go to all these world-class gyms and really get in shape for a boxing match and destroy Jake Paul easy. Not to even mention the clinch game, which Jake Paul would just get thrown around in and ripped to the body. So, I'm fucking done with this shit. Goodbye. Thank you for watching. Click that button up there. I won't make any more fucking videos about this until something else massive happens. So, yeah, shit. See you later.